Hey, welcome back, everyone. You've got myself, Fakul, who leads the growth team. We've also got Jamie. Hey, Jamie, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jamie. I'm running the strategy lead for Elevation.
Excellent. And then we've got an exciting guest. So we've got Sash. So, Sash, who are you? What do you do? And why have you gate crashed our podcast?
Cheers for cool. Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be on this call. My name is Sash. I am the founder of Elasity and I'm a Cyber Republic DAO council member. Why am I here? Really to disrupt the digital economy. I've been very heavily focused in the creative side as far as working in the music industry. For many years, I got a diploma in music production. I kind of studied the intersection of creativity and technology, understanding the engineering aspect, but also working with creatives and bringing creatives together to create, musical outputs. And that was really insightful on that side. And I got to understand the struggles that the music industry faced, primarily with royalties and also piracy, and how they actually bring in revenue. A lot of my friends today are musicians and or producers, and I also see them still struggling to make decent profits in this industry. From the music side, I then went into film and I worked with 3D scanning technology, photogrammetry and LiDAR technology to 3D scan everything from actors to sets to environments to props and turn them into 3D models, which were then used for visual effects and to 3D render great CGI scenes that we see on the big screens today. So everything from James Bond to Jurassic World to Batman, I've been fortunate enough to be in those environments and to see both on a small scale, how you've got, your everyday content creator in creative and how they struggle to make a living, but then also the inefficiencies on the larger scale, because for the best part, how are the assets being managed by the big studios? There was quite a lot that I learned from that side, and also how are movies being distributed effectively and what are the kind of revenue streams and what percentages are being taken through middlemen. It was a really insightful experience. And through this journey, I learned about Elastos, the smart web technology suite. I met some incredible individuals along the way who have inspired me. I like to think of the last 5 years as being a Web3 kind of university course in itself, where I've been able to meet great minds, but also learn so much about the industry and these new tool sets which are coming to empower us as individuals. Technology in itself is there to both cut down operational costs, but allow us to do more for less as individuals and not to be so dependent on others to do that for us. We can really see that already with AI this year and how much that's allowing us to do more without the need of others. And these tools as well in Web3 are going to allow us to effectively kind of own our data, but also monetize it more effectively too. So I set up Elasty with that core vision. We're here to support content creators globally, to use the latest technologies and bring them together to allow you to monetize your data more effectively and to kind of disrupt current business models we see today.
Awesome. So I think that's quite a lot to unpack. And if I think back from a Elastos perspective, especially for us as a growth team, it really helps. There's certain hero products or projects we see building on the chain, and Elacity is certainly one of them. And Jamie, I think you'd agree in that you've got Elacity where it's got a strong founder who has a clear vision and is actually doing something against the grain. But from your perspective, Jamie, how does one market a product, and what are some of the differences that you see when it comes to Web 2 versus Web 3? And then I think after that, I'll come back to you, Sash. For those that aren't familiar with Elacity, let's go into what exactly can it do and what are some of the features?
Yeah, I think, I don't think everyone wants to hear from me. I think they want to hear from Sash more, but generally, I think the basics of it is really just to identify what's the problem you're solving, right? And helping people understand that problem is a problem sometimes, and then pointing them in the direction of the solution, which hopefully is what you're providing as a product. So that's a really basic level. But I think what I've always been impressed with since joining sort of, the Elastos ecosystem and getting to understand it more, was that of all the projects being built and all of the people building within the space, I feel like Elacity is the one that really kind of either understands how all the pieces can really fit together to build something unique and truly Web3, as opposed to, you look at a lot of other platforms and stuff. There's usually a marketplace, but it's only doing one thing. It's just selling. Or if there's a project that's really just focusing on one thing, what you're able to do, and maybe you can talk to this about, what makes Elastos special is your integration with other projects within the ecosystem, your integration with the technologies, the technology stack that Elastos has. In your mind, is that what you see as being one of the core values for building within this ecosystem?
Yeah. And thanks, Jamie. Very kind. Elasity is here to facilitate, decentralized identities. So we want to enable decentralized identities to both generate assets, to manage those assets, and then to also distribute those assets, which kind of falls in line with monetize them in this kind of new digital economy. If we look at Web 2, the difference between Web 2 and 3 is it's first becoming more user-centric. All Web3 really represents is the evolution of the internet. So, these new technologies, these new tools are coming into play, which allows us to now be more empowered. So we now have the ability to get decentralized identities. So rather than the Web2 format, where we are all connecting into one big centralized blob, like Google or to Amazon, Facebook, whatever it is, they're all big kind of internets in themselves. Everything we generate under that identity is not in our control. So we're kind of like shackled to these systems, which we don't actually own. As now we're saying, well, actually, rather than being a blob, all connecting to a blob, we can become individual dots on a network. And we're now adopting decentralized identities. And with those identities, we can build up our own reputation. So we can basically trust each other. We can have our own data vaults. So we build up our own data stores. We can have communication channels and ways in which we can basically communicate with other data vaults and also with other identities. And then we have automation through smart contracts, which is the kind of blockchain technology side. A big part of what Web 2 didn't have was very efficient logging of everything that's going on. In every business, the reason we do business together is to exchange value in some way. And because we don't have effective logging systems, we rely on someone in the middle to basically facilitate that transaction. So if anything goes wrong, we can go to that person and they can support us. But now we're opening up a world where we've got these miners, we've got the ability for people to offer their computational power to help manage these public ledgers. And so suddenly everything is suddenly distributed, and you and I can do a direct transfer or a transaction with each other, but we can leverage all of these computers around the world. So it's about bringing all these kind of technologies together and saying you are now an independent dot online, and then our job as Elacity is to say we will help connect you with other dots. And rather than what we see in Web 2, which is a business model where you're giving your data to these big blobs and you're not in control of it, and then they're selling it to advertisers, which then monetize your data, they monetize you. And then in doing so, they also give you adverts and things that can actually just on an even mental health level can be quite harmful. We kind of saw that with Cambridge Analytica and kind of how politics was shifted. It's quite dangerous. We're seeing now the ability in Web3 to say, well, actually, you are an independent dot, you can connect and trade with others, and all you have to pay is like a small toll fee. So that's kind of the new business model. You retain all the value that you create, and you pay these small toll fees to do business with others. And that's our job. So we're essentially bridges. We're connecting dots and allowing them to do transactions with each other. And in doing so, we're fueling a new digital economy. So we're about 20 to 30% in. We offer the NFT marketplace, we offer the identity layer using Elastos, and how you can build up verifiable credentials, which is basically zero knowledge proofs to show that you're a trustworthy individual. So you could, with a third party, get a KYC verifiable credential, which means you've basically proved who you are as an identity. But now on Elasty as a marketplace, you could use that to basically access, age restricted content, but you're not giving the person who you're accessing your personal information. You're just proving that you've got a stamp of approval to enter and to do that. So it also is about respecting privacy, but making sure everyone can trust and there's reputation. And then what comes next is the DRM, digital rights management, the ability to transfer files off chain, because not just about blockchains, but other off chain movement, and then the data vaults themselves. So all of this is slowly but surely being integrated. It's a lot to kind of take in, but actually when we continuously zoom out and see the bigger picture, it's like, wow, there's a whole new economy that's being built parallel to the ones we see today. And this is drastically going to benefit every individual around the world and what they can do themselves without relying on others. And the big one will be that they'll be able to make more money online as a result, because there's not all of these middlemen taking cuts. So if you're a content creator today making money, you're going to be able to make more money in Web3 in the coming months to years as this all develops. So it's quite exciting.
Awesome. No, and I think you hit the nail on the head. And in that, if you think about Web2, identity plays such a big part. And people often talk about identity and DID solutions, but why is it needed? On average, a Web2 user has 150 accounts and 150 passwords. Web3 is at risk of repeating those same mistakes because you've got different chains, you've got different DApps, people sign in with something locally, maybe they use their wallet, but again, people have multiple logins. So that's where I think you've definitely taken the right approach, and I think Elastos really helps in that. We've got this dedicated identity chain that's universal, that can be used across all of Web3, so on all chains, etc. So I want to explore that a bit more with Elacity. So if let's say I'm a brand new user, I've come onto the platform, I've got my own digital identity. Let's say I've gone as far as KYCing myself through the platform. Right now, what can I do? There's different districts. What sort of USPs does the platform have right now? And then, what's the next thing that you're planning to release?
Yeah, great question, and completely agree. Ryan from your team summarized it years ago really well, which was a decentralized identifier, DID, your digital identity, can be looked at as one universal identity owned by you. And there's a big difference because we have scattered logins across the whole of Web2. And now we're saying you can have one identity and you can manage everything under it. All your crypto wallets for multiple networks, your reputation, your data, it all can be done in one place. And, when we think about Elastos and its positioning, it's, the DIDs are at the forefront as far as being so innovative and ready, commercially ready. They're W3C compliant, which is a standard set out through Tim Berners-Lee, who was the founder of the World Wide Web, and they set out standards and criteria to be met, and Elastos is leading in that forefront. So for DID technology, that's why we want to use Elastos and continue to use this technology, and then how we can build this new reputation layer above the whole of Web3 gets super exciting. So you hit the nail on the head in that you can get your know your customer credential, which gives you a green tick on Elacity. So that means, in theory, you can trust that person the most, because let's say you have an issue or something goes wrong. Well, now that person can be legally kind of liable for their mistake, in that you can go to the third party that issued that credential and say, look, we've had a dispute and this is my problem. We also issue blue ticks, which are socially verified DIDs. So with Elacity, you can log in with your identity, go to your profile, go to manage social credentials, and you can log in to your Twitter and to your Discord or your email. And in doing so, verifiable credentials are issued to your decentralized identity. You can delete that at any point, but as far as it's there, and it gives you a blue tick, and it also helps showcase, these are accounts in which the identity has verified that they own. So now you can say, well, actually, when I'm dealing with this person who I have no idea about, I can at least see that they have social accounts which are tethered to their DID, which I can learn about. And it's just about raising trust. The next step is very much so in line with how you can leverage those verifiable credentials for additional services. So let's say Elacity has a district which is for adults, or it's age restricted content. Well, you can now say, well, you can only enter this space if you have a KYC verified credential, and that KYC, whilst you're not giving your personal information to say your exact date of birth or who you are and where you're born, all you're giving is you're verifying that you are above age, and you can then enter in. So it's a really nice way from a zero knowledge proof perspective on how you can protect privacy, but also interact with services, and also protect, in the case of like adult restricted content, especially kids, the new internet needs to be protective of young minds and those that are searching through the web. So there is this kind of privacy and security layer that can form from it, which I think is really, really important. We don't really have that today.
Yeah, no, and honestly, I think that's where you're probably onto a winner, because there's loads of NFT marketplaces, and people just know them as a place to sell generic NFTs, and that's about it. But really, what sort of utility can you get from an NFT, or what could an NFT really represent? It can, it doesn't just have to be an image, it could be video, license rights, etc. But with Web3, people often think about staying anonymous and being open source, and you cannot be moderated. But in a real world, you need a level of moderation or a level of gating certain content, right? You can't suddenly create a Twitter that isn't moderated in any shape or form, because what's stopping your kids seeing something they shouldn't? So instead, by saying, well, actually, depending on who you are, if you want to access certain data, you need to be able to prove that you're a certain age, or you have that right membership. So I think building Elacity from the ground up with that view in mind is a really good idea. But I know you briefly mentioned it, but I think it'll be good to understand a little bit more, what's different about, let's say, Elacity versus OpenSea, right? So you guys are decentralized, but like, what are all the additional features you have? Like, why would someone that's using OpenSea right now want to come and play on Elacity?
Sure. Yeah. So, and just quickly going back to your thoughts before, for meeting compliance, like, we need to have this reputation layer in place. We've been living in the wild west in crypto, and I understand it's been great fun. It's been extremely volatile. That volatility still continues, and that's for people who are financially incentivized to be involved, that doesn't change. But when it comes to looking at projects as securities and the kind of the fraud that's also taken place in the space, we need to meet regulation. We need to basically ensure that this ecosystem is growing into a world which, you are respected as an individual that can have your decentralized identity, but you're also not breaking laws, and there's also compliance being met. So you can imagine having, a set group of verifiable credentials that can allow you to invest in a certain security on Web3. Suddenly now you're meeting law requirements of different jurisdictions, and it's suddenly turning everything. It's allowing capital to flow into Web3, which is exactly what we want. We want to see growth and expansion. So going to your point, for call on OpenSea, the big difference really is that we are looking to be the first to incorporate DRM with NFTs. So if you think that OpenSea, and like Elasticity today, is a marketplace in which you can trade the rights of tokens, and you think of it, you're exchanging tokens in someone's into different decentralized wallets, and in those tokens is some metadata which attaches to a blob of data that is usually on IPFS. It's the Interplanetary File Storage System. It's like a decentralized file storage system. So the data itself isn't actually being effectively managed, or nor is the rights. It's just the token that's being exchanged from A to B, different buyers and sellers. So what we are really trying to innovate on today is, how do we effectively turn that blob of data into encrypted content which has specific rights and different ways in which you can use it. So we use that with what's called digital rights management, and essentially you can turn NFTs into keys that then unlock encrypted content, and that's something that hasn't been done today. The other important aspect of DRM is it also pays out to the content creators who produced it. So the core goal of DRM, which is, think of it as a completely different, technology, is to protect content creators. So Web 2 had its huge kind of expansion and aha moment because content creators started being able to monetize themselves more effectively. The only problem was it was really found through Google or Netflix, YouTube, and these kind of big centralized platforms. So how can we democratize DRM? So everyday individuals, including big business with IP rights, can enter the space, but they can feel that their content is not going to just get pirated or misused, and it can be protected. And yet they can accept cryptocurrencies and different kinds of payments globally with, complete peer-to-peer transactions. So what we are focused on first is DRM for video. So how can we essentially allow for business models, which today, if we look at, say, YouTube, they'll take 45% of content creators' revenue. How can we effectively get rid of that and enable content creators to create around 95% of what they own? And then, allow a small headroom to say, well, actually, anyone in the world, if you sell my content for me, you can get a percent as well of the cut. So it could be like the 5%, or it could be 2.5 or 10. It can be whatever they decide. But essentially what we're now doing is we're protecting the content creators' work. We're allowing them to monetize their data more effectively and earn more revenue from it. But we're also allowing anyone in the world to become a marketer of that data. And so suddenly people who have followings and who have, they can leverage their kind of the attention that they can bring to certain assets can now basically get involved and earn a cut from it too. So it's very inclusive as a result. How we then expand that out into different assets, we can go into everything from documents to music to games. DRM also can manage, so when you get YouTube Premium, for instance, and you pay to not have ads anymore, you're paying a DRM system to basically take that away. So we can then look at Web3 platforms having, DRM subscription models or things that give you privileges. And we can then go into 3D assets, think 3D printing and how you could allow DRM to allow you to buy a 3D model and then print it at home. But it helps protect how that data is used. So you might only be allowed to print it once and then that's done, or you might be able to buy it, print as many times as you like and sell that on to someone else, but now you don't have the asset anymore to do for yourself. For video, we look at pay-per-view models, all of these different monetization systems which are going to help empower content creators. And that's really our goal, is to usher this new technology into Web3, to talk about, how we can bring the reputation layer in with the decentralized identifiers, and then the way in which you can then use those credentials to access certain content, and to really usher in this new digital economy, which is open, transparent, and there for everyone to get involved with, and ideally raise the amount that people can earn as individuals rather than relying on centralized entities. The final step really is then we're allowing decentralized identities, we're allowing smart contracts to allow for trade directly of assets, we've got the DRM in, we've got the reputation layer, and then how do we actually now allow you to download Elasity onto your own computer? And rather than connecting online to our server, even though you're a decentralized identity and we don't hold data on you, rather than coming to our one hub, you can just download it onto your own computer. And now we have these kind of peer-to-peer communication channels where everyone can set up their own marketplaces, they can set up their own kind of hubs, they can sell data and assets from it, and they can communicate directly with each other. And then that's like the real kind of Web3. We've kind of achieved our job here. We've automated a system where anyone can participate and they can get involved and they can build trust and they can trade, and it gets super exciting.
I think, I mean, very, very visionary. I almost kind of want to like step back a couple places because, just to focus on DRM, like already you're talking about use cases that are super easy to understand why they would like just, revolutionize everything. But the fact that you're already building it, it's not just an idea, a white paper is amazing. But just to look at DRM specifically, I think, for our audience who maybe isn't familiar already with, the way that NFTs work currently, I think, when we, I'm aging myself here, because DRM for me was like the technology that the the music industry put on CDs so you couldn't burn them, if you remember back in the day. But you know, when NFTs first came about, I was really intrigued by this idea of creating permanence around something that was easy to just copy and share with all your friends, right? Like growing up with Napster, you could just basically just copy and burn and reuse the same files. And then NFTs came around, and it was all of a sudden like, oh no, there's a certain amount of them. It builds some permanence into a digital file, right? Which was really interesting. But it was only when I started talking to you about DRM that I started to realize, like, you know, that's also very limiting, because it's like I can mint 3 versions of one image or one video, and then I can have 3 different people own those, and I can build in the smart contracts some residuals so that if it gets sold, you know, the artist can make money. And it was revolutionary in that respect. But it's still very limiting, because you can only own it. You can only own it. You can only sell it. But when you think about the way that IP works in the real world, everything's about licensing. Every time you hear a song on the radio, every time you hear a song, you know, in the store while you're shopping, every time that, you know, the soundtrack of a movie, and that's just music, you know, like if you start looking at pretty much anything, it's all about maintaining and owning and owning the original. And instead of creating 1,000 copies that other people can own, it's about creating, so you maintain one master copy really, and then you just license it. And you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, through the DRM, you could probably time gate, you know, how much people can use a certain thing before, you know, you have to re-up and pay some more. And so it just builds so much more flexibility into what has evolved from being something that you could just copy willy-nilly to owning and holding, to now being able to sort of, you know, rent and borrow and license, which I think is just amazing sort of evolution. And it's where I don't know why anyone else isn't thinking about it, to be honest.
I'm sure they are, and for multiple asset types, you know, this can be applied, and it's, you know, it needs to be, it's going to happen. It needs to happen, and you know, we really want to play a part in that story and deliver this kind of vision, because I think, assets as a whole, they can be used in so many different ways. You know, there's the business to consumer side, or the consumer to consumer. But actually, as you mentioned, to sell it to be streamed or to be used in different kind of applications, from radio to television, these are all huge business models today that are also very, you know, hidden. They're not really, your everyday individual doesn't get to participate in that. But what if you can buy, you know, an asset within a contract which is governed by blockchain technology, so it can't be manipulated, but that contract has specific rights tethered to the assets within it. And then, you know, when you own a share of that asset, or you own that asset itself, or one of the amount that are available, you can actually start to see streamed payments coming into your wallet and get paid for it. There's two kind of areas of DRM. There's the content expression language, which is, you know, who was responsible for creating this product, and you know, you'd all have an agreement on who gets what royalty amounts and who gets what percentages. So you're effectively, so in our testnet portal, you'll be putting in all the different addresses from the distributor, the producer, the you know, different stakeholders that made that song, their wallet addresses and their percentages, and then you go into the actual rights side of how can those now assets be used, and for what reason. And you can go down a long rabbit hole about expanding on rights. You know, this is, even today we could argue that DRM in Web 2 is still being expanded on. You know, it started off, I think it was started off through just being able to buy an asset outright through Apple, and then, you know, you own it. And then suddenly what we started to see kind of take place was these new business models and how you can use those rights more. So I think from our side, we just want to first of all deliver the DRM system and the ability to buy assets outright and to stream the payment that is paid for that asset to all of the people who are involved in the supply chain of delivering it. And then the next step is, okay, well, now we can really expand rights. And we've already built this side in testnet. So then the next step is, okay, now let's start building out rights and the ways in which it can be licensed to either to a consumer or to a business, and ensuring that that's protected too. So it's it's a super exciting technology. You know, there's even the AI side, which we haven't spoken of, in generative AI. But when we look at, again, the picture of Elasty, it's the generation of assets, the management of assets, and then the distribution of assets. So DRM is very much in the distribution side. Then the management is very much in owning your own data. So Web3, the ability to have decentralized identities, to have that control. And then the generation side is, you know, it's almost like the ability for everyone to be creative and to be able to, you know, leverage AI to create assets, and how that can also interlink with DRM gets quite interesting too.
No, that's really cool.
For the AI side, sorry for cool. For the AI side too, I mean, just thinking about the lawsuits that are just starting to kind of come through around, you know, the generative AI, how it scrapes the internet and then builds off of that data to create, you know, unique artwork. I mean, I can imagine a time when DRM could actually help to ensure that artists, through that sort of automation process of creating that artwork, if there is inspiration and it can be proven through, you know, some other type of AI that can do that comparison, could still then give you that, you know, through the rights management software, allow you to then, you know, still get, you know, recognized for that art being taking inspiration from your art, for example. And I wonder if that would solve the problem that is obviously starting to creep up with artists and the use of AI.
It gets, the more like we delve into the technologies and the more we see how they can all work together, it gets really exciting, because you're right. You know, I'd argue today, trading art or generated art is trading for the prompts that generated them, rather than the IP rights of the art itself. We do have, you know, these lawsuits and these kind of court cases that need to play out, because it's all so new. So it's going to be really interesting to follow that. But what if, you know, let's say we've got artists around the world, they've all got decentralized identities, they've all done KYC checks to verify that they are, you know, that they are who they are, but they then, with that verifiable credential, can enter a space where they can upload their art, which is going to train an AI model, which the outputs that are generated now pays out to everyone who was a part of that model. Suddenly it's like, wow, we've created an inclusive model where everything's being like logged efficiently through blockchains, everyone's being paid for their contribution, and we can trust that everyone who put the data in, it has been KYC'd, and if there's a problem where, you know, there's, you know, a legal issue that arises, we can fall back on that kind of reputation layer too, on who did that. So the different pieces can all kind of come together, and this is just in the AI side, but it's really exciting. There's lots of things that can be done.
And I agree. I think that's really fascinating. And, you know, more broadly, I feel like we're past the, you know, the lawless environment that is crypto. Everyone's out to make a buck, and, you know, you can remain anonymous, you can make a lot of money, you can lose a lot of money. And, you know, there's been too many macro issues and like blow-ups that, you know, for real adoption to come along, you know, you need regulation. So, you know, I've said it before, I think 2023 is going to be the year of regulation for the space. But also, you know, it's not about completely reinventing the wheel. It's about taking the best of Web 2, but democratizing it, and not just having a few players own everything and monetize everything. So things that we take for granted in Web 2, someone needs to create them in Web 3. So, for example, digital rights management, you know, legal infrastructure, identity solutions. So, you know, I think definitely Elacity is kind of on the forefront of some of that innovation. You know, for those that aren't super familiar with the project, I guess, you know, DRM is quite a technical field. It's quite a specialist area. So, you know, do you have a team around you, advisors that's kind of helping you build out this technology? Because I actually think you're probably the first or one of two, based on my research, that's trying to build DRM in Web3. So, like, you know, who do you have helping you build this?
Yeah. So yeah, there's not too many that are publicly, you know, showcasing it, but I wouldn't be surprised that there's more. But certainly, it's, you know, it's an area which needs to be tackled, and it's going to happen. So we're fortunate in that we've got the team of Elasity is only 3 of us. So we've got myself, we've got Anders, who's the kind of CTO, and then we've got Elacity, who's like the full stack developer wizard. So my job is kind of vision, funding. Anders helps basically on the technological side, and Elacity on the implementation. So we're very small, we're very agile, and I believe that, you know, if technology is here to cut down operational costs, we should be small and agile, and we should increasingly be using these new tools to be able to do more for less, and to basically automate our processes through blockchain, so we don't have to do it ourselves. So that's where the smart contracts and kind of the new technologies come through. As advisors, we've got Rong Chen and Dr. Xin Wang. So Rong Chen is the founder of Elastos. You know, he was the 10th employee at Microsoft Internet Explorer. He helped build supercomputers back in the 80s, you know, an incredibly rich history. And when it comes to Web3, I would say I look to him almost like a mentor, because I've been in his kind of shadow for the last 5 years, kind of learning from everything that he's been saying, and that's kind of given me the confidence to move forward and on my vision and trying to bring this forward. So Web3 side, we've got someone who's extremely experienced and also can inspire and help us navigate. Then on the DRM side, we have Dr. Xin Wang. Now, I believe Rong and Xin were opposite dorms back at university, and I think it was Chicago, Illinois, and you know, they both in their own right are extremely smart individuals. Rong went off into the kind of operating system side. He worked with Microsoft, and then he went on from there and set up Elastos as like a Web3 operating system. And then Dr. Xin went into the DRM side. And now Dr. Xin, he first of all built DRM systems which were used by the government. In a lot of cases, innovation can come through government funding, be it for military purposes or just for protection, like homeland security. So he was building DRM to allow for documents to be basically sent across, you know, across sea to the west, to Europe, in a way that protected the data. After that was, you know, proven and shown, he then got onboarded by Web2 companies to basically commercialize it for assets. And so he's had a massive part in, you know, the DRM that we see today and we use, and which caused, you know, this huge kind of boom in the Web2 world. And again, he reinforces very heavily that it's inevitable that DRM is coming to Web3. It's going to happen. It's a case now of what does the architecture look like and how does the system work. And so I do believe, you know, we've had great insights into the standards and to the individuals who can who are researching and who can provide us with that knowledge. And Dr. Xin himself has, you know, built up architecture plans which we've been using to implement on our side. So extremely valuable coming from, you know, a Web3 mindset to how we now bring in the DRM through experts and you know, people who are very experienced in the field. So it's great.
Sounds like you got a dream team. You know, you got Rong on one side who's been talking about Web3 before people even knew what it was, you know, almost 20 years. And then you've got a pioneer of DRM, so almost a match made in heaven. So look, thank you for the time, Sash. I know we've run a little bit over, but it's always exciting to hear about some of the projects building on Elastos, and, you know, we certainly look forward to the DRM solution, as well as some of the other new features. But yeah, are there any other features as a closing thought that you want to speak to? I know you didn't even get a chance to speak about the map and the different districts and modeling.
Yeah. Again, there's always things to be talked about, so be careful what you wish for cool. But no, not too much more besides that we have a generative AI district. So today you can do text to image, and you can generate your you can generate art which can then be minted. And we have, the plan is to basically expand on generative AI. So, can we bring in a whole host of different, text to image, text to video, text to 3D model, text to text even. You see with ChatGPT and what's going on now. There's all of these incredible, tools that we can bring into Elacity, and we can make it, very gamified and fun for users to basically be creative and generate assets. and then how that interlinks with being able to store it onto your decentralized data vault. So when we talk about own your own data, we don't have storage on Elasity where we're holding generations you own or you make. We give you the tools through Essentials, the Elastos Essentials wallet, to log in with your DID, your digital identity, to build your reputation up, and to have your own data vault that when you create generations through AI, it's being saved to your data vault. And then when you disconnect from Elasity, you're disconnecting with your data and everything that you've kind of generated. So you've got your finances, your NFTs, and your off-chain assets all in your control through your mobile wallet, through Essentials, with some seed phrases that only you can decrypt and use. So it is very privacy orientated, and very much like you're responsible for being in the digital economy, and here is your portal to come in and to enjoy the trade and to enjoy the communication side. So keep an eye out. Flint is our AI district. We'll keep expanding that. The DRM side is going to come in roughly 4 months' time, like our version 1. So we're looking, and that'll be for video. It'll be interesting where we get to in those 4 months, because we might have time to expand into other assets, or we may just say, let's just go heavier on the different rights that we can use. But we're making really good progress at the moment there. And I'm super excited for Elastos, and actually how it can identify itself, or how it can basically inject itself into Web3 as this kind of identity solution, because everything can fall under identity. You can be multi-chain, you can go onto any blockchain platform, but you can log in and control all your assets through your DID, and then you can build the reputation and manage your assets. So all of it's going to slowly but surely kind of come together, but we're fully committed to just bringing these technologies together into one convenient portal. So keep an eye out. Visit ela.city and connect in and have a play around.
I have a closing question. Speaking about the creator economy and talking about owning your own assets and data and being able to maintain privacy and stuff. I mean, so much of the new technologies, whenever they come out, are usually pushed to the forefront from a very specific industry. And I'm thinking about, OnlyFans, perhaps like a version of OnlyFans. Like, would you ever consider having a red light district within Elacity? I know my mind is going to those dirty places, but it's the opportunity is huge for creators, right? And that is, an area that is doing very well right now. So
yeah, definitely. I think we are a smart city portal. The fun side of Elasity, whilst we talk about very much the tech jargon, and it's very heavy on what we've got infrastructure wise, but from an outset, we're a smart city portal. You come into Elasity, you have your different districts. You've got your marketplace district, you've got your cinema district, and you can have we can build in the adult district. And the only way you enter the adult district is by having a verifiable credential which shows you've been KYC'd on your identity to give you access. And that's a protective layer, but also it opens up this whole new economy for adult content. If that's something which I think every city will have its red light district. I spoke with Zin. I asked the same question, what are you most excited about as far as districts? And for Dr. Zin, who's all about security and DRM, his was jail. There needs to be a jail system where if people are being bad actors, maybe they get some kind of it's a system of verifiable credentials, or it's a system where basically they're now no longer allowed to access the city. And there has to be these kind of things built in, and how that intersects with governance too, that's further down the road. But these are all really great areas, and I think it's great, Jamie. We will continue to build out districts. Part of the argument of us being able to cut down operational costs through using new technologies, in my opinion, means that we can build more for less. So rather than having this specific app that's for this one thing, the whole purpose that I'm seeing is, no, we're building a super app. It's an application in which you can enter into multiple different services, and those services are all automated and run through smart contracts, through blockchain. So it means that the actual operational costs for us drastically lower themselves, meaning we can do more. So my job is continuing to build out new districts, but ensuring that first of all we just get our solid grounding, we get business models in place that can sustain us, and we likely will need to go multi-chain so we can show that we can use digital identities with any chain, and then we can start thinking about the next capital raise and how we then start to build out more districts. But we're here to be one fun, convenient, smart city portal, and yeah, that's a really valid district.
It's the reason why Sash is wearing red today, right?
Exactly.
No, but it's a good point. I think, you always, something you can't shy away from. It will always exist. The good thing though is, by having DIDs, verifiable credentials, DRM, you can make sure not only the individual consuming the material is age appropriate, but also the material itself, right? It can be tracked back to make sure that it was consensual, it's from a verifiable source, etc. So that's really interesting to me. And again, Elacity, one of the hero projects of Elastos, benefited from a grant from the Cyber Republic DAO. So, definitely one we're keeping a close eye on. And yeah, so thank you very much, Sash, for the time. Thank you, Jamie. And yeah, we'll share some links on in terms of the website. You've got a Telegram and a Twitter handle, etc. So yeah, definitely encourage everyone to like, subscribe, follow, play around with it. I love the Flint district. Love to generate some art. And yeah, more to come. So thank you very much, Sash.
Thank you very much, everyone.